When software has been developed cloud first, it mostly today has become that it only exists on one system. It's software as a service, it's nothing else. And they might have an on-premise alternative, but it's limited. It doesn't have the same features. Resellers of software likes to have it on their system, so they don't have to adapt to the customer system. But I like that the customer should have the option to choose either as a service or on-prem or wherever they want to run the software.
Welcome back to Open Matters, the podcast where we talk about open source matters that matter. We often hear about big announcements and migrations, digital independence, and moving away from big tech platforms. But much less often do we hear from the people who are actually tasked with making those changes happen and the day-to-day realities of delivering new digital workplaces. Today, I'm joined by Johan Bernhardsson from Redpill Linpro, one of the leading open source consultancies in Europe, working across public sector and enterprises to implement alternatives to Microsoft and Google environments, from document editing and file storage through to collaboration platforms and digital workplace tooling. Johan and his team sit right at that intersection between technology and people, helping organizations navigate not just new software, but new ways of working. Johan, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you.
I see on GitHub you describe yourself as a Linux and open source magician. I love that as a title, but just help us understand a little bit more about what do you do and what is Redpill Linpro.
So Redpill Linpro is a large open source company in the Nordic region. We have offices in Sweden, Norway, and Denmark. We do a lot of stuff like hosting in Norway. We have API management, we have identity management, we have a lot of open source consultants. We work with both open source and closed source software, but if we have an open source alternative, we'll try to use that. My area of expertise is digital workplace, working with tools like Nextcloud, Collabora, Mattermost, Rocket.Chat, Jitsi to enable companies and enterprise and government to migrate from Google and Microsoft platforms primarily to open source software or better alternatives to what they are using.
Can I be cheeky? How's business going? Are things going well, or are you very struggling for clients? What's the feel you're getting of the world?
It's improving a lot. It has been the last 2 years. Especially the last year with all the insecurities around in the world. But in general, when we go down to actually doing things, it's still kind of slow. But it's improving. It gets easier and easier to talk about alternative software.
So I enjoyed first meeting you, I think, a couple of years ago at a conference in Germany. I understand you're squeezing in the Swedish podcast circuit recordings this week. I think we're looking forward to seeing you or one of your colleagues at our annual conference in April. But as you just mentioned, you sell digital services. So why do you try and spend so much time sharing ideas, going to conferences, meeting with key partners, talking with us on podcasts? Why is this so important to you?
One thing for me, if I'm going to promote some kind of software, I like to be involved in the project. That's why I go to conferences about that software. I try to be a part of hack weeks if they exist. I try to be involved in the GitHub repositories. Even if I'm not a developer, I try to assist in improving software with translations, with small patches or comments on where I think I can guide something to a better place than it is right now. And connections with both developers, salespeople, and the customer, from the CEO level down to the guys that actually use the software we implement, is important. I get the different perspectives. I know how the software is developed. When I talk to the developer, why function in the software works as it does. And then I can translate that to the end user when they are frustrated. This doesn't work as Microsoft does or something like that.
Do you do site visits for your end users? Would you go and actually be there physically, or does your work, is it exclusively remote or?
It's a bit of both, mostly remote. But we try to do, when we want to implement some kind of system at the customer, we try to use to do a study before. So we interview a couple of the employees in different areas, see how they are working with the current software, and then we're trying to go to implementation and use that reference material and how to guide the customer into how to use the new stuff better.
So supposing that I meet you at a conference and I'm interested in your solutions, I've been thinking about taking more control of our digital stack. I'm the CTO or something like that. And so we have a chat and we say, great, let's work on having a more sovereign digital workplace. How would you then actually help an organization to approach that? You're talking about a whole stack, aren't you? Document storage, chat, meetings. What does that actually look like in reality then?
Basically asking the right questions. What are they trying to replace? If it's a completely new thing that they are starting up, then I always come up with ideas on and ask questions how they want to work in the future. But when you come from an older system, it's important to see if the customer has thought it right. I mean, I have 3 different chat systems. I have 2 video meeting solutions. And how do they want to collaborate? Do they want to have a separate chat that's not connected to the file storage or the video meetings? Do they like to use Zoom? Then Jitsi is some kind of has a use case there. If they like to use Teams, then it's Nextcloud Talk is more appropriate for the teamwork and the integration with all the other software. And then they might already have some kind of system that they are using. They might have Alfresco as a document store. Can we improve that instead of coming in with something completely new? And after that, I will give recommendations. Then I have my own preferences, but I try to be as transparent as possible to the customer, so I don't just sell them my favorite software. It should be what works best for them, nothing else.
It's interesting the way you talk about it there, with options and trying to find solutions that work best for the customer. I suppose that's quite different for your customers compared to what they're used to if they are looking at the more sort of all-in-one traditional, more proprietary solutions. Is that a surprise to them that there's different ways to do things, or?
In some cases, yes. In some cases, you might even confuse the customer because they are used that there is only Office 365. You don't have anything. And then I talk about 4 or 5 different ways of editing a document, and then several different ways of chatting and video meetings and stuff like that. So,
what do you mean I have choice?
Yeah.
Are there any good success stories you can share with us, perhaps from your recent work?
We have one where they primarily do file sharing, and that wasn't we didn't replace Microsoft in that case. We replaced an old NAS drive that stood in the office where everyone collaborated, and they wanted to move to something more efficient, a better tool of working where they maybe in the future could expand to do more. But to start with, it was only keeping documents, working documents. We opted for Nextcloud. We wanted to add Collabora to that, but they didn't want to be the ability to view documents yet, maybe in the future. And the only alternative they had really was to go to Office 365. But the sensitivity of the documents said that they couldn't, legally couldn't. And they wanted something that could be completely separate from the other systems, the other documents. And then we have some where we have implemented collaboration, external collaboration. where they can't invite others into their Office 365 or their current way of working. They need to have some kind of other system where they can store documents that might be GDPR sensitive in some way. And in that system, they are using Collabora to view and edit files. We get questions where it might be confusing for external parties there is a different way on. They don't need to download the document. They get an editor directly, and no downloading and uploading again to a file share somewhere. Actually, I thought with Google software that many has been introduced to the Google G Suite, that editing stuff in the web browser would be easier, but apparently not.
And are they happy with the solutions? Do you get lots of teething issues, or what's the ongoing relationship?
The main issue is the softer part. Menus aren't looking the way that they are supposed to. Last week I spoke to one that said that one reason that it doesn't move from PowerPoint is that's what's expected when you go to a conference. For him personally, it was one transition in PowerPoint that doesn't exist in LibreOffice or Collabora yet.
Interesting. We'll have to expedite that one, clearly. So I know that we have a whole team of busy bees who are working very hard to make sure that presentations look as beautiful as they should. We were chatting briefly last week before the recording, talking about ideas. And you said that something you're aiming to do is to provide the same delivery on-premise as in the cloud. What did you mean by this?
When software has been developed cloud first, it mostly today has become equivalent with that it only exists on one system. It's software as a service, it's nothing else. You need to have a subscription somewhere and only there to access the software. And if they have an alternative that can be run on premise, it's mostly limited. Most CRM suites, for example, they might have an on-premise alternative, but it's limited. It doesn't have the same features as the service has. Most resellers of software likes to have it on their system, so they don't have to adapt to the customer system, different ways of installing software, stuff like that. But I like that the customer should have the option to choose either as a service or on-prem or wherever they want to run the software. And that also means that if they are not prepared to administer the software and upgrade it on-premise, they don't have the resources or the knowledge, then I should be able to deliver the same type of updates as I have in the cloud. So they don't need to care about the updates, changes. I can explain to them what an update means and then implement it for them. Or I can activate other resources at Redpill Linpro that can install OpenStack to replace a VMware cluster or to build an on-prem cloud solution where they can run cloud-based software.
I like your phrasing there, an on-prem cloud solution. It's often presented as if these are sort of opposites. Either you can have collaborative functionality in someone else's cloud, or you have an awkward on-prem.
Yeah, and when you're talking with, that's mainly AWS or Azure people, when you run VMs or containers in some kind of way, they mostly say that the companies or governments tech division, their administration people are not ready to run high available software at scale. And if they aren't up, they don't have the expertise to run it, we need to help them gain that expertise to run it themselves. In some cases, I have a year where I'm educating, I'm administrating, I'm doing upgrades, but I'm also educating the local administrators in how to run a database or how to do upgrades on Nextcloud or Collabora or Rocket Chat or stuff like that. So they have the ability to run it on-prem.
That's very cool that you can also, as well as providing a new tech solution, that you can also train up people locally. Because I suppose in many ways these all-in-one bundles perhaps infantilize end users or system administrators, but it's not as scary as we might think. It's okay to run your own things. We've been speaking with different people from around the world. We've spoken to some German partners and some in America. And one of the questions we try and ask everyone is just what's their feeling about the trajectory of these solutions. What's the impression that you're getting in the Nordic region?
There are still some struggles to convince people in using something different than Excel and PowerPoint, but it's positive. It's improving. I see a lot of people around me in forums that I never expected to talk about alternative software, to be resilient and self-host, and be digitally independent, and they have been spokespeople for American-based software before and has been afraid to be left behind because AWS and Azure is technically more advanced than what we ever could do in Europe. And now these people are talking about security and self-independence and sovereignty, stuff that I've been talking about since before Office 365 and Google. So yeah, it's positive. I think it's more things will happen this year than it ever has.
And when people have this understanding that AWS or Azure are more technically capable, is what you're saying. What do they mean by that?
I think they have a good package. That's basically it. You have a big page where you can select the software that you want to use. You don't have to set up a service, a server, and add a service and learn LDAP and single sign-on and everything around it. You just have to click, I want identity management, and then you're done. That's basically it. And most of the large European hosters hasn't done that. They expect the customer to come with their own solution. And that's something that needs to change if we are going to compete. And also I see some hosters all over Europe that has their own hosting facility, but they also have AWS as a management option to add on. But in general, we have to improve the type of services that we promote as hosters. We need to have the neat package. We have Nextcloud as a service. We have Collabora as a service now. And we also are working on Keycloak as a service to get identity management and stuff like that we can put on our page and say, here you go.
Yeah, that would be great if we can have those sort of options available. It's something that we try very hard as a company is that just removing of friction from the user experience.
Yeah.
To try and make it as straightforward as possible. It's not necessarily about adding or removing features. It's often just about how they are exposed is what we found. Is that your observation? Or?
Yes, it is. How it looks, how it is exposed, the phrasing around it, how you deliver it to the end customer. The look and feel of software is more important than you think.
Well, Johan, thank you so much for joining us. We wish you all the best of luck with your work on digital workplaces in 2026. And we look forward to seeing you at a conference soon.